Since 1933, the government, your government, has been a friend of the farmer.
Farmers.
Farmers.
U.S. farmers.
America's farmers.
And I love them, and I'm never going to do anything to hurt our farmers.
Welcome to Iowa, where dusty roads pierce through over 20 million acres of corn and soybeans. The towns are small, and the skyscrapers dotting the horizon aren't office buildings, but grain elevators. This is America's heartland, and farming runs in the blood.
I am the third generation. My grandfather started farming in Nebraska for generation one, and in the mid-50s moved here to central Iowa. And my father continued, and then now me after.
What brought your grandfather to Iowa?
The situation in Nebraska was three brothers farming together. They weren't able to accumulate enough acres, and then drought situations in Nebraska decided that they should split up. My grandfather moved to Sioux City, Iowa originally, and farmed there for a couple years, started a dairy herd. That didn't work out, so then there was an opportunity to rent and buy this farm.
Are you hoping your children will continue in the farming business in some way?
I certainly do, and I think that that was something that I'm very proud of, to pass on that tradition, that appreciation for agriculture to all of my kids.
This I have not done. That's Stu Swanson. His farming family has seen dramatic changes in the business of agriculture since his grandfather came from Nebraska 75 years ago.
So each acre of corn will cover 3 times with this machine.
Over that time, U.S. farm productivity and output has nearly tripled, helped by technological innovations. With that explosion in productivity has come larger and larger farms, including for Swanson, who now farms about 1,900 acres, a third of which he owns, with the rest owned by investors from as far away as Norway.
Yeah, I think for this time of the year, in mid-June, the corn looks about as good as any. I've farmed for 33 years, so this is my 33rd crop that you're walking through today. Other than a little excess water that we've had in the last few days.
Well, I was going to say, my boots are sinking down here as we walk through it. But also, look at the color of the soil. Why is this so rich?
We're lucky that the glaciers moved the topsoil here. We also are in an area of Iowa and of the country that is called the Prairie Pothole region. So we have really rich organic soils from the previous plants and things that were grown here. And so that high organic matter gives that black color that we are very proud of here in Wright County.
That might all sound like good news. But as president of the Iowa Corn Growers Association, Swanson knows all too well the challenges facing America's row crop farmers. A lot of farms, I understand, are actually cash negative. Are you cash positive?
I haven't ran a number to tell you today. Certainly, we know that over the last 3 years, we've seen about a 30% decline in commodity prices. I think over that same time, we've seen the 9 major crops all be underwater, so we are producing at a loss on the 9 major crops.
Gold Eagle Cooperative is an intermediary for farmers in the markets they serve. It is located on the outskirts of Eagle Grove, a short 20-minute drive up the road from Swanson's farm. We sat down there with Tom Halverson, an Iowa native himself.
I remember when my grandfather started, when I was a little kid, he had a little tractor with a harvester that would do 2, 1 on each side. He'd be going back and forth in the field like this for a couple days.
After working around the world for Goldman Sachs, he's now CEO of CoBank, which operates as a farm credit bank, counting as clients both Swanson's farm and Gold Eagle. Halverson has a front row seat for the storm brewing over America's crop farms.
Corn, soybean, and wheat prices are meaningfully lower than they were a couple of years ago. That translates into, lower cash flows for the producers themselves. At the same time, rural Americans in general and farmers in particular are not immune from macroeconomic conditions, including inflation, for example. They are incredibly exposed to trade, buying and selling internationally. Producers have been squeezed quite dramatically over the last 12, 18, 24 months by a combination of lower commodity prices for what they sell on the one hand and significantly higher prices for the inputs.
Once seen as the supermarket of the world, America is instead finding out the hard way that the world is doing its grocery shopping elsewhere, and has been for some time. This year, the U.S. is expected to record its third consecutive annual trade deficit in agriculture, something that hasn't happened in 70 years. Javier Blas covers commodities for Bloomberg Opinion.
I think that the reversal on the agricultural trade in the United States is a structural feature. I don't think it's going to go away. And there are two elements there that are very important. One is that the United States is importing more agricultural commodities than they used to. And the reason for that is that we like to have green beans and strawberries and other agricultural crops the whole year. We don't really want to buy them when they're in season. The other problem is that the United States is starting to export less agricultural commodities, and that is a lot in part due to Mr. Trump's trade policies. If you are hurting one of your largest buyers, one of the largest importers, one of the largest customers of American food industry, that's China. The big problem for the United States agricultural sector right now is that in the past, if a country was having a big disagreement on trade policy with the United States, it still needed to continue buying corn and soybean and wheat from America because it didn't have any other options. Today, there are many other options, and particularly one, and it's Brazil. Brazil, over the last 40 years, have transformed itself into the supermarket of the world. That is a role that the United States used to play in the 60s, 70s, and all the way into the 80s. The damage is done. Every time that you scare buyers, the buyers are looking for an alternative, and they will have very long memories. Japanese soy importers still remember the very brief trade embargo imposed by the United States more than 50 years ago on soybeans. And that is half a century later. The buyers still remember that. Once you open that door, you cannot put it back. It has been done, and I think that the damage is done.
As far into the future as we can foresee, the agricultural economy of the United States is very, very dependent on access to overseas export markets. My uncle, who lived about a mile from where we're right now sitting, was one of the first American farmers to go on a trade mission to China in the late 1970s. And back then, we didn't sell any soybeans to China. And since that time, we've grown our export market to China from zero to being the biggest export market. And until our recent trade disagreements with China, we got up to the point where it wasn't yet 50%, but it was closing on 50% of all U.S. soybeans got exported to China, which is an inconceivably large amount of soybeans that are being grown in this part of the world, put on trains, shipped to the West Coast, put on ships and sent to China. And so, we now have a very significant vulnerability to the need to sell our soybeans internationally because we produce way more soybeans now than we possibly consume in this country.
With China and others now looking elsewhere, the U.S. is finding ways to drum up domestic demand. Part of the answer lies in alternative uses, and that's where Chris Boshart, the CEO of Gold Eagle, comes in.
We're about a 3,000 member owned cooperative. We provide goods and services to farmers. So we provide a lot of agronomy services where we'll sell farmers seed, fertilizers, crop protection products to help their crops grow. Our feed group will take farmer corn and grind that, blend that, and feed that back out to livestock. And then our grain division, we take the farmer's corn in the fall or whenever they need us to be there to deliver it. We try to help them find the best markets. We do have a partnership with an ethanol plant, so we manage an ethanol plant that's just right out the back door here. We grind about 30 million bushels of corn a year. We're making about 90 million gallons of ethanol out of that corn, shipping it all over the country into the our liquid fuel supply.
When you and I think of corn, we may think of corn on the cob, corn chips, corn starch, or even popcorn. But only about 8% of the corn America produces is eaten by humans. The majority is crushed and turned into livestock feed or processed into ethanol and used in gasoline.
We think that You know, the ethanol policy gets debated around from time to time. You know, the current administration talks a lot about, you know, domestic energy production and has been really good for biofuels. And we've seen biofuels be a real bipartisan solution over our history, and it's really been good. And so as far as, you know, corn demand today and where corn demand can grow into the future, we really think that there's a huge potential for ethanol to continue to be a bigger and bigger part of that local demand.
The same transition from food to fuel is happening for soy.
Now we're trying to find alternative uses, for example, to those soybeans, some of which can be turned into alternative sources of fuel. So for example, the government announced some changes to the renewable fuel standards and so forth that have been very, very good for the soybean market.
But that may be only half the story. As farmers reel from a challenging export market, higher interest rates have delivered a second blow in what turns out to be a pretty capital-intensive business.
The high horsepower tractors in new situation is probably $600,000 to $700,000. This machine was actually built in 2009. It's probably the oldest piece of equipment that we utilize on a regular basis. So its value, as it sits today, probably $150,000 to $175,000. So
how fast do they depreciate?
Yeah, really fast.
Farming is such a capital-intensive endeavor, whether it's the cost to finance their land acquisitions, just their interest rate to put the operating loan in, you know, to put a crop in. They're investing hundreds of dollars in acres just in the input side to put the crop in, and then their machinery and equipment purchases have just really skyrocketed in the last 3 years.
In the cornfields of Iowa, farming is more than just a business. It's a way of life passed down from generation to generation. So do you come from a family of farmers?
I do. I am the third generation.
I was born on a farm in southeast Iowa.
When my grandfather came here, you couldn't farm very much in this part of the state because it was all water. It was wetlands.
This is where I grew up, and I'm the fifth generation, so we're raising the sixth generation here on this farm. So back in the late 1800s, my great-grandparents would have came here and started the farm.
J.D. Meyer's farm lies a short drive from Stu Swanson's.
You'll start seeing, I don't know if we can see it yet, but you'll start seeing an ear shoot.
And he, too, farms corn and soybeans. But where Swanson is the third generation in his family growing row crops, J.D. Myers is fifth generation and plans on passing it along to his own son.
300 bushel on the bottom of that bin that's left, so take a few loads to get up there. Yep. But other than that, we'll be done, and then we can grease the shivers and get it ready to go.
For decades, passing it on to the next generation has been the story of American farms. But the agricultural workforce has been in steady decline, from 8 million in 1949 to just over 2 million today. Technological innovation has certainly made farming more efficient, but urbanization has also contributed.
As folks have moved into the cities, and we even see that here in Iowa, you know, there's definitely an urbanization trend, and that's all good. I mean, that's all good and well. But I think that the value of folks really truly understanding where their food and fuel come from, there's just tremendous value there, and we need to keep doing that as ag leaders to keep telling that story.
But if Iowa's farming families hope to pass their way of life on to the next generation, it has to be a sound business as well as a way of life. And the combination of low prices and higher costs has meant that farm income has plummeted over the past few years, meaning that sometimes financial institutions like CoBank have to make up the difference through loans.
We rely not only on CoBank, but local banks to help provide financing. The cost of production is at such a high level, and it just keeps increasing, that we need that backstop to know that we can average cash flows out.
One of the most important indicators of credit quality for the farm credit system, and indirectly for farmers as well, is farmland value. Right, so we watch very carefully what's happening to farmland value. My family owns some, so we watch it too. And farmland values are always a massively lagging indicator. Commodity prices have come down a lot, right? Corn's down, beans down, wheat's down since, you know, the peak 2 years ago. But farmland value is still like this. It has sort of stopped rising in the way that it had been rising for a long time. But as you can imagine, if prices stay low and cash flows are negative for a lot of producers, they don't have free cash flow and working capital, and they have to, draw down, because farmers tend to be asset rich and cash poor, right? They own land and physical assets and machinery and stuff that's worth things, but it's not liquid. So credit quality is actually pretty good. Balance sheets of most farmers were in good shape, until the last 12 to 18 months. But this stress period that we're now in is going to manifest over coming, 6, 12, 18 months, and that'll show up in tougher cash flows, people needing to raise liquidity in other ways.
Farmers can't keep borrowing forever to make up shortfalls, but there are signs that things could turn around, not because of higher prices or lower costs, but because of the government, something farmers like JD would rather not rely on.
Biggest thing, I guess for me as a farmer is I want to make sure we have markets. I don't want direct payments. I would rather not have direct payments from the government. If we can have markets that will buy the grain and stuff from us, not have to depend on the government for and develop those markets.
We don't want to rely on government payments. That's the last thing that we want to do. We've worked to try to eliminate that, and we want to try to create demand through domestic markets, through exports, to offset that.
Last year, the U.S. government paid out roughly $9 billion to farmers. This year, that figure is set to surge to an estimated $42 billion, much of it aimed at weather-related disaster relief and support for those in financial distress. Still, the role of subsidies raises tough questions. After all, the U.S. didn't bail out DVD manufacturers when streaming upended the industry. But then again, DVDs are a luxury, while food is a necessity.
Now, your viewers who are not close to this would probably say, well, why do we do that, and how much do we do that, and what's the explanation for that? And to which the answer is, if you travel around the world, as I have in my career, you'll realize and know that feeding your population is a national security consideration for everyone on Earth, right? And we kind of take that for granted here because we're so productive in our agricultural economy. We don't just feed ourselves, we feed a lot of other people all around the world. But being able to have a food self-sufficiency and a comprehensive, productive, safe, secure sources on a through-the-cycle basis of food and fiber for the United States of America is frankly a matter of fundamental and vital national security interest. And in order to safeguard that, we have put in place over many decades in this country a whole bunch of support infrastructure to ensure that we will be able to feed our population under any and all circumstances. And that infrastructure has been enormously successful for so long that almost all Americans take it for granted.
Is there also a risk in terms of business and the economy in ongoing subsidies to farmers?
It's a very important question. I never met a farmer that wants to make a living at the expense of their fellow tax-paying citizens. That is a true statement. On the other hand, just like every other advanced industrialized country in our peer group, so think Japan, France, UK, Germany, or whatever, because of the national security implications and so forth, you've got to have a good, stable food supply. You've got to make sure that that's taken care of. So you can't leave that 100% to the vagaries of the marketplace. And so it's not a surprise, therefore, that all of our peer countries have a similar kinds of mechanisms in place to ensure that, and to ensure the care and well-being of the rural land. But having said all of that, it is a risk that if you take too much too often and get your significant risks taken off the table for you whenever they manifest by the government, that you're subject to the risk of the complacency of thinking that that's always going to happen. And that can be true in a variety of ways. And I think in our country and in our society these days, there is a tendency for the population to want the government to de-risk things when they go wrong. All those things are legitimate and reasonable, but they also, over long periods of time, change people's behavior in the marketplace. And the market starts to take risks that end up becoming mispriced. You know what I mean? And they end up that the people who are having to provide that support are going to have to provide more of it more often than would otherwise be the case. And that is a risk for the agricultural economy. The Congress, I know, grapples with this on a consistent basis to try and determine the appropriate and most effective level for this, right? It needs to be enough to ensure that we safeguard the stuff that we think we need to safeguard for the best interest of the country, but not so much as to create bad risk-taking behavior or unsustainable subsidies or to stimulate overproduction that we don't want or need.
If we don't have a strong agriculture sector, if we can't feed ourselves, we are no longer the superpower in the world. And so all of this, it's a complicated sort of balance that we're striking, that we're working to achieve.
President Trump's Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, has a packed travel agenda, visiting the likes of the UK and Italy and scheduling trips to India, Brazil, and Peru, all in an effort to drum up overseas interest in U.S. agriculture.
Specific to soybean, corn, really our row croppers, that's really a very direct result of China. And I know we're making progress on China. We'll continue to make progress, hopefully. But if we don't, opening up markets all over the world. Listen, EU, for example, charges a 10% tariff on average on American products, and vice versa, we only charge 5%. That's 2x. The average tariff charge around the world is about 15% on American products, when we charge on average 5%. We've been taken advantage of over and over and over again. So as we are realigning, we're also opening up these markets with the trade deal. So you'll continue to see this moving forward. Now, if around harvest time, into the summer, beginning of the fall, we see some real economic harm with our farmers, our president has been unequivocal in saying that he's got the farmers back. And if there is short-term consequences, we'll make sure to do everything we can to mitigate that.
Yet mitigation through subsidies could be detrimental to the farmers of today and the generations to come.
I'm a big believer that ultimately market forces are the most important thing. But government policy can be either a tailwind or a headwind, or sometimes it's confused and it's both at the same time.
And right now, the market forces have swung against farmers.
So you put that all together, it's not good business to be a farmer in America today. And when the business is not good, what you see is that ultimately some farmers will call the day. But more importantly, and I think that here is the big problem, is that we are going to see the children of those farmers deciding that farming is not their way of living.
Right now I'm going to Iowa State. I hope to come back and, try some new things on the farm and continue to grow it.
America's history is rooted in agriculture. For J.D. Myers and Stu Swanson, it's run in the family for generations, and their children are set to continue the tradition. But for the tradition to continue, they will need robust export markets for what they produce. The technology is there, the land is fertile, but ultimately there has to be a solid business to make sure someone's around to farm it.